thanks everyone. I'm really pleased to see HotCloudPerf working so well. So I would like to somehow use 30 seconds to guide the round of applause to, well, primarily Alexandru, who made this run, Dimitri, and the other organizers. There were quite a few persons behind the scenes, so many thanks for running this. This was an unexpected event, let me put it this way, in the current context. So I would like to give you a gentle introduction to the SPEC Cloud Group. Let me see if this works. Yes. With the intention, I'll try to minimize this, with the intention to, in about 5 to 10 minutes, to tell you who we are. But the main message is perhaps very simple. Okay, this should really work. Yeah, the main message is very simple. We simply take a rather broad approach to all aspects of performance that relate to clouds. So cloud benchmarking, quantitative evaluation, and general experimental analysis. And we are constantly looking for more people to join us. I'll show you that we are actually quite a few. But because of the breadth and depth of the activity we have, I think it's very nice to find new partners from both industry and academia. So if you want to join, let us know. If you know others who could want to join, let us know. Because I think it's worthwhile. So let me tell you a bit what we do. I've mentioned this broad approach to, well, general topics in performance in cloud benchmarking. What we do is very simple. We work together. So we're a remote, international, I would say even global team. We meet periodically, first in umbrella meetings that happen monthly, in which we discuss all activities, but also different members of different activities meet when they need to. We do this remotely online. So apparently we were perfectly prepared for this period. And we develop all sorts of things. For example, methodological elements. We don't want to say that we develop methodologies. In a sense, we all work under the same umbrella of one methodology, but we are looking for methodological elements of cloud performance, cloud operation and behavior. We also build tools from benchmarks to just conceptual tools such as metrics, from workload generators to simulators. So everything that could lead to a quantitative evaluation tool, that's part of our work. We start with instruments. So we like to talk about the difference between an instrument and a tool. A tool, think about a shovel. You go next to it, you pick it up and you can start digging, and anyone without much training can do the same. An instrument is perhaps better exemplified by a piano. And you can go next to a piano and try to kick it like a shovel, but you will produce sounds like a shovel player. It takes lots of training and tuning and the right environment for the instrument to work. So we start with instruments and our hope is to end with tools. We're focusing on what we see as novel cloud paradigms. So we started in general with clouds, I think, roughly a decade ago. Nowadays, we're looking for what we see as the hottest cloud paradigms or visions, things like serverless computing. You've just heard Erwin giving a talk about it. The cloud continuum. So we're thinking how the, at this point, I can even say the traditional cloud, how it's being extended with edge and other kinds of resources. We're also looking at what's happening under the hood, and there we're seeing big problems related, for instance, to the Convergence HPC big data. So Alexandru can tell you much more about it. We focus in general on how to build these benchmarks around classic performance metrics. There's a reason for which we've been using them for so long, but also novel cloud properties, non-functional properties. So elasticity, different forms of dependability and performance as we see them in more modern contexts, all are part of our vision and scope. Let me see if this works. Yes. And the way we do this, it actually, so perhaps the most important part of the time I spent preparing this talk was to actually try to collect all the logos of every partner. I apologize if I missed any. There simply are many participants, and I'm going to show you that they are all needed and really important for our success. So I will not go into more details here, but we really have an international team and representation from both academia and industry. I'll show you a couple of typo here, but I'll show you an example of completed activities and ongoing activities in the next couple of minutes. So one of the things we started, I would guess, in a sense, long ago, was the notion that when we started to get together, we didn't even know how to talk about cloud usage patterns. We wanted to measure performance, but we didn't even know how to express the scenario for which we would measure performance. So we spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to express these patterns. The result is in this publication. The slides are on Slack, so you can easily click through if you want. You can see here links. Then another thing we tried to do was to understand what has changed from the traditional metrics that we used, if you want, in the traditional data center. And this nice report, it was published in ACM Tompex a couple of years back, really focuses on different kinds of metrics. And if you look at the names, some of them ring the bell, availability, but they are changed for the context of cloud simply because they're defined in different ways. But others actually sound different. So I don't know of much work prior to cloud trying to, well, to characterize, but really to transform isolation or the notion of performance isolation into a metric. Elasticity is definitely something that grew in the world of cloud. And the notion of risk, that's not new, but how to measure it for clouds, that really makes sense to discuss. We also put quite a bit of effort into benchmarking autoscalers. And I think it's a typical example of what you can get by joining our cloud group. It's very simple. There are quite a few autoscalers out there, and each developer tries to show that theirs is better than the others. But here is where games with experiments and with statistics come into play. And one of the things you can do under the umbrella of the cloud group is to simply join forces and try to approach an experimental or measurement problem very systematically. So really try to cover all the angles, all the aspects. Of course, this leads to a very large amount of conceptual and perhaps most importantly, practical work. So somebody really has to compare all these aspects. So that's something that typically a single research group cannot do. But if you put together the resources, you pull them together, the resources of 5, 6, 7 research groups, then you can really make a long-lasting investigation, something that we could easily call a grand experiment. And I know I'm not using perhaps, or perhaps I'm using terms that are a bit too pompous, but when the comparison in scale versus other experiments is so large or so much in favor of this, it makes sense to call these grand experiments. So here we looked at, I think, 8 autoscalers, and we tested them extensively using close to 15 metrics in various scenarios under various situations. In terms of ongoing activities, well, Erwin has already mentioned the activity on serverless. So I guess the crown jewel would really be to have a powerful benchmark that really covers judiciously the typical use cases we see in the field, and hopefully with some notion of covering the emergence of new use cases. But focusing on a reference architecture, the one that Erwin has just mentioned, that I think is really representative for what we see. So even if new platforms are emerging at this moment across the many tens of platforms, even if they are significantly different, we think the reference architecture really captures the backbone, the features that really exist in most of them. So because of this, I think there's a way to build a benchmark that has some lasting power. And with a renewal or replenishment process, this benchmark could last a lot longer. We worked we worked and work on cloud experiment methodology. And here we really try to take a balanced approach. So one possible approach is to simply say, hey, unless something is strongly reproducible, for whatever definition of strongly, it should not be published. And it should not be used, and it should not guide any decision. Unfortunately, I think that if we say this, then we can stop the show for a long period of time. So somehow in the community, we need to have gentler approaches. And this is very similar to what was happening in the 1960s and 70s in computer science, in the dispute between strong verification, the Dijkstra and Hoare camp, and software testing as the other camp. And I think history shows that software testing has actually won with reasonable guidelines and processes. And probably this is what we should be focusing on as well. So that's also what we are working on here. We are trying to move to the edge. So we're trying to see what are the use cases, what kind of benchmarks could exist there, perhaps even conduct various kinds of measurements to show what is achievable in practice. We will have a bit later. But in general, we have way more. So if you're interested in this, have a look. There are way more details in the SPEC newsletter, which was shared in the main channel of ICPE. So if you're looking into that channel, then next to the, I think it was 5 minutes ago, the notice that the proceedings for ICP are finally online, you will see this RG newsletter, which describes better our activity and main results. So it's really a pitch for you to think whether you would want to join. If you want to join, let us know. In principle, what we do is we are members of SPEC Research. This is an abridged SPEC affiliate, well, not affiliation. I think the proper term is subscription, with, I think, a very low fee every year. If your organization is already part of SPEC, you don't need to pay anything extra. The low fee at this moment is, I think, $200 a year. And what do we do? Well, I think if you're from the industry, here's where you will find partners for key questions related to performance. Here is where you can share expertise and where you can typically find interns. And also here is the place where you can develop tools that you cannot typically develop internally for various reasons. For instance, because you don't have the data sets, or you don't have the expertise, or you don't have the personnel. If you're from the academia, here is where you really can find lots of partners. You can find data and problems to work on, and simply you can approach bigger problems, I would say. You can also find good sites to send your students to. So with the industry partners, I think we formed good collaboration so far. And you can really form these kinds of collaborations into future projects. If you're a postdoc, well, I think it's the perfect place to develop your leadership skills so that you have some, well, strong proof in your CV that you can do it. Here is where you can serve in the community. We organize HotCloudPerf. We have a strong contribution every year to organizing ICPE. And why not? Here you can find your future employer. And last but definitely not least, because in the end, the students really do the hard work. They really work these topics. But here you can find topics and places to intern. And why not people who will recommend you for your next job, next to developing your various skills. I'll stop here. If you're interested in what we do, you can hear and see and read way more. So I think we have a strong position in everything that has to do with cloud performance. I've listed here articles, so publications, but we really do and build real software. So if you're interested in data sets and software and other such artifacts, let us know, because we really develop and publish such things, and of high quality. So I'll stop here, and if there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to take them. Alex, please correct me. I think there is also a short introduction to the Edge activity.
Yes, there should be some introduction to the edge activity as well. So if there are questions, please make them quick.
Yes, because I think in Europe many people are approaching truly the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess there is no questions about the SPEC RG Cloud. Well, anyway, if there's any questions, you can contact anybody mentioned here in the Slack channel anyway. So at least these days, people will be very active with ICPE, but I think nobody will just sign out of the Slack channel anyway. So please contact them or us at any time. You'll get some reply.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have Norbert talking about the SPEC RG edge activity.
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
I will make it short, just a 1 to 2 minute rundown what the SPEC Edge group is about. So we are part of the RG Cloud group, with sort of one of the newer subgroups of the RG Cloud. And our goal is it to define and develop a new edge benchmark with representative edge workloads. And we did our first paper also on HotCloudPerf last year at the ICAC, where we tried to sort of what characteristics you're looking for in edge benchmarks in edge workloads specifically. And we had first few use cases that we collected and see if our characterization was properly correct. And we're now looking forward to extend this work, select and collect new use cases from literature, and see if our characterization is still holding up or if we need to refine our characterization. And as said, our main goal is in the end to have a representative benchmark for edge computing. So if you're interested, please feel free to contact us.